Members, it's time and we have a quorum. First of all, confirmation of the minutes of the 15th meeting held on the 7th of February 2014. The minutes have been forwarded to members. Can we confirm the minutes, please? Thank you. Matters arising. My meeting with the Chief Secretary for Administration, we told the Chief Secretary that some members would like her to come back again as soon as possible to exchange views on population policy. The Chief Secretary said in principle she would only be too happy to come to the House Committee to answer members' questions. But as the public engagement exercise for the population policy is soon to end, she suggests that we should wait till the Hong Kong University has done an analysis on the views received before she comes back to have exchanges with members. Ms. Emily Lau. Well, on both occasions, I didn't get a chance to ask questions. So, Mr. Chairman, in future, when you schedule meetings, you have to make better arrangements. I've already made good arrangement, even better arrangement, I said. By that, I mean members would have a chance. Members who wish to ask questions will have a chance to do so. Because at both meetings, we didn't get to ask questions. That's frustrating. Well, and maybe we can't help but holding longer meetings. So let's take a look at it, Mr. Chairman. Okay, I'll talk to the Secretariat then. Thank you. Any other questions? If not, and also, I've pointed out to the Chief Secretary for Administration that in the first half of the session, the administration has only tabled 5 bills, far less than the 11 expected. The Deputy Chairman has also pointed out that in the second half of the session, we have a tight schedule. We are concerned that we won't have time to consider backlog of bills. The Chief Secretary has expressed concern about the progress of the legislative program, and she's reminded directors of Bureau to speed up their work. But because for some bills the consultation is longer than is more complicated than expected, and that's affected the schedule, the progress. Business arising from previous Council meetings, Legal Service Division report on subsidiary legislation gazetted on the 14th of February 2014 and tabled in Council on the 19th of February. Legal Advisor. Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The paper number is LS26/13 to 14. First, toys and children's product safety, additional safety standards or requirements, regulation, and so on. There are the legal notices 17, 18, and 19. Now, last year, this Council passed an amendment bill to enhance the safety standards for children's toys and children's products. And so the commencement day is appointed. The ordinance came into effect this year, and then there will be a new set of regulations to replace the existing regulations. For these 3 pieces of regulations, there are no major drafting issues, but in paragraph 5 and 6 we pointed out that in dealing with offences there are different approaches, and that's members should take note of that. Now, in the existing regulation, we go by the penalty provision in the regulation, but in the original, in the new regulation, some of the penalty clauses are based on the provisions in the principal legislation. And so in some cases, there may not be the additional fine of $1,000 for a continuing offense. The administration has consulted the major chambers of commerce and also some of the NGOs. There's been no objection raised to the commencement date. And there are 2 other items of subsidiary legislation: Public Health and Municipal Services Ordinance, Public Pleasure Grounds, Amendment of 4th Schedule Order 2014. This legal notice is to designate 15 places as public pleasure grounds, and 4 places will cease to be set aside for use as public pleasure grounds. Commencement date 14th of February this year. Last item, subsidiary legislation, Air Pollution Control Amendment Ordinance 2014, commencement notice. The Air Pollution Control Amendment Ordinance 2014 was passed this year, so this is about appointing the commencement date as the 4th of April 2014. For the first group of subsidiary legislation, there are 3 legal notices on children's products and toys safety. Do you wish to set up a subcommittee, please? I propose a subcommittee. Anyone who wishes to join, please? So we'll circulate paper to members. Second group, Public Health and Municipal Services Ordinance, Public Pleasure Grounds Amendment of 4th Schedule Order 2014. No need to set up a subcommittee. Then the next one, Air Pollution Control Amendment Ordinance 2014 Commencement Notice. No need to set up a subcommittee. Business for the Council meeting of the 26th of February 2014. Report number 12/13 to 14 of the House Committee on Consideration of Subsidiary Legislation and Other Instruments. The report covers 3 items of subsidiary legislation, the period for amendment of which will expire on the 26th of February. This report also, and the 3 items include the Antiquities and Monuments Declaration of Historical Buildings number 2 notice 2013. The chairman of the subcommittee on the notice has indicated his intention to speak. So as the chairman of the House Committee, I will move a motion to take note of the report in relation to the notice at that council meeting after the financial secretary has delivered his budget speech. Questions? As at the deadline for giving notice of questions on the 17th of February, there are still 2 written question slots remaining, so there are only now 20 written questions scheduled for the meeting, both first reading and moving a second reading. The administration has advised the clerk to the Legislative Council that the Financial Secretary intends to present to the Council at the bill meeting the Appropriation Bill 2014 and the estimates of expenditure for the year ending the 31st of March 2015. Report of both committees and subcommittees. Second report of the Subcommittee on Fugitive Offenders, Czech Republic Order, Mutual Legal Assistance in Criminal Matters, Spain Order, and Mutual Legal Assistance in Criminal Matters, Czech Republic Order. Mr. Sin Chung Kai. Well, Mr. James Toh has to attend to some district work, that's why he cannot attend this meeting. So on his behalf, I'd like to give a report. The subcommittee reported to the House Committee earlier on its deliberations on the Fugitive Offenders Czech Republic Order. The subcommittee has scrutinized in detail the remaining Mutual Legal Assistance in Criminal Matters Spain Order and Mutual Legal Assistance in Criminal Matters Czech Republic Order. The subcommittee has made an article-by-article comparison of the provisions of the 2 orders with those in the Hong Kong SAR Model Agreement for the Mutual Legal Assistance in Criminal Matters. Details of the subcommittee's deliberations are in the second report. The subcommittee raises no objection to the Spain Order and the Czech Order. The administration will give fresh notices for moving the motion to seek the Council's approval of the 2 orders. Members, questions, please? If not, decision on bills committees and subcommittees. As at the 20th of February, Thursday, there are 7 bills committees, 5 subcommittees under House Committee, 8 subcommittees on policy issues under panels in action. 4 subcommittees on policy issues are on the waiting list. Next, proposals of the Committee on Members' Interests to amend the registration form on members' interests. Mr. Kok Him.
Thank you, Chairman. The Committee on Members' Interests, CMI, consulted all members on the proposed changes to the requirements for registration of members' interests. Except for the President, all 69 members responded. A summary and details of members' responses are set out in Appendices 1 and 2, respectively. So, members may refer to the 2 appendices. And the CMI decided at its meeting on the 29th of January 2014 to propose amending the registration form on members' interest or registration form to implement the proposed amendments which, according to the consultation outcome, are agreed by a majority of the responding members. In such amendments, members must register the following additional particulars. 1. The start dates of having and the dates of ceasing to have, during the term, registrable interests under the categories of directorships, remunerated employment, officers, etc., and clients. 2. the dates of ceasing during the term to hold or own shares of each company which has been registered. And 3. The reasons for participation in sponsored overseas visits. A majority of members also agreed to revise the layout of the registration form. Also, members might recall that the Council passed on the 8th of January 2014 the resolution to amend Rule 83 of the Rules of Procedure to tie in with the commencement of the new Companies Ordinance. The amendment replaces the term subsidiary of another company in Section 5A with the term holding company, and deletes the reference to nominal value in Section 5H. Corresponding amendments are also made to the relevant pages of the registration form. The amended registration form is in Appendix 3. As the new Companies Ordinance will take effect on the 3rd of March this year, the relevant amendments to the registration form should also take effect on the same date. The CMI therefore proposes that the new registration form takes effect from the 3rd of March 2014. Also, the CMI proposes that the new registration form should have no retrospective effect. I urge members to consider the CMI's proposals. Subject to members' comments, the CMI will submit the new registration form under Rule 83(1) of the Rules of Procedure to the President for approval. Thank you.
Members, any questions, please? If you have no questions or comments, then we will submit this revised registration form to the President for his approval in accordance with Rule 85, AP3(1) of the Rules of Procedure. Next item, proposals to seek the Council's authorization for the appointment of a select committee to inquire into the termination of Lee Wai Ling's contract by Commercial Radio and related matters, and that in the performance of its duties, the select committee be authorized to exercise the powers under Section 9(1) of the Legislative Council Powers and Privileges Ordinance. Ms. Claudia Mo and Mr. Albert Chen have written in separately, asking that we discuss the matter. Mr. Albert Chen's letter was only received yesterday morning, past the deadline for proposing agenda items, but considering that Ms. Claudia Mo has already proposed a similar item, since the nature of the items is similar, I therefore give exceptional approval for Mr. Albert Chen to include his letter in the agenda today so members could debate the matter together. As you know, this is only to ask that I, as the chairman of the House Committee, should move this motion at a council meeting. The wordings of the motion have been distributed to members. I will ask Ms. Claudia Mo and Mr. Albert Chen to speak before I open the floor to members. Ms. Claudia Mo. Well, in this Lee Wai Ling case, Ms. Lee Wai Ling has made it clear that there is a licensed organization that is Commercial Radio, has succumbed to pressure because of its pending renewal of license in 2016. So I would like members to support the powers and privileges motion. So we will summon Ms. Lee Wai Ling, the senior management of Commercial Radio, and of course the Chief Executive, Siwa Leung himself. I hope that we could also summon Henry Tang, because Henry Tang said out loud and clear and openly that Siwa Leung expressed strong views on the renewal of the license of Commercial Radio. Now, Henry Tang's famous words that "you're lying" actually came about in that context. Another point, Liu Meng Hong was interviewed by Li Wailing, but then the court then asked the commercial radio to submit all the materials, but commercial radio and Li Wailing said all the materials have been broadcasted. So, but on the day when Li Wailing was dismissed most rudely, she wasn't even allowed to go back and pack her stuff. The commercial radio sent someone to pack all her stuff and her interview materials and report materials. I think that's big concern, because journalists have access to certain materials, and these materials are handled this way. The third point, Xu Xinpo of the Central Policy Unit said this clearly at the panel on public service. He said he's going to wage a media war on behalf of the chief executive. What do we mean by that, a media war? We've been talking about the constitutional reform. There is not yet a consensus. And there's also this suggestion of Occupy Central. Now, Li Wailing's style of hosting a program is that she would, see through item till the bitter end. Like when Qing Chang was imprisoned, there was the yellow ribbon campaign, which was most touching. So, are they worried that Li Wailing may start an Occupy Central blue ribbon campaign or some other ribbon campaign? That's why she's driven out. Now, some said that Li Wailing said that there's someone close to Xi Wailang who reminded her kindly that she had to take care of her job. She said she wouldn't name that person. Remember, this at a time, it's like Tong Shua said that he didn't know who was Lo Chang-on.
Mr. Albert Chan, Chairman, I need to declare my interest first. I many years ago lodged a complaint against Li Wailing with the Broadcasting Authority, and my criticisms were about her lack of professionalism and professional misconduct. So I did have grudges with her, but on this proposal, I'm only proposing it based on facts. It has nothing to do with how I feel about her in the past. In relation to the dismissal of the commercial radio host, I'd like to make a comparison of this incident with Mr. Robert Jones' incident. In terms of the allegations and what happened to the two of them, the allegations put forward by Ms. Li Wailing are much more serious. For example, the personal freedom might be affected. It's more than just an advice. We recall back then about the parrot incident. It was just a gentle reminder, and comparing to the dismissal on this occasion, it's very different. The dismissal was a brutal interference with press freedom, and this time is even more unreasonable, even more brutal, and with even further implications comparing to the interference with academic freedom. And I have prepared a table comparing Robert Chung and Li Wailing's incidents. And I think the allegation is very serious. So this is unfair to leave this doubt behind, and it's not fair to the media. Is the government interfering with press freedom and media freedom? I think a select committee of this council should be set up to make an in-depth inquiry. And I welcome 689 and his subordinates and his lackeys to come out and chant slogans and defend the reputation of their master. They could come out and pounce on me. I welcome it, but a select committee comprises open hearings and there will be a chance for them to express their views instead of manipulating and interfering with media freedom in the background. So, in all fairness, a select committee should be set up. Several members would like to speak. 2 minutes each. Mr. Wong Kwok Hing. Mr. Chairman, I oppose the suggestions by both Ms. Claudia Mo and Mr. Albert Chan to set up a select committee. I think the allegations made by Ms. Li Wai-ling are not based on facts. If they were based on facts, she should disclose all the facts. And Ms. Claudia Mo and Mr. Albert Chan, on this basis, passed on their criticisms, alleging that this is interfering with press freedom and undermining public interest. It is actually politicizing this incident. From various critics on the Li Wai-ling incident, I have some observations. First of all, this incident might have to do with the relationship between the superior and the subordinate. And secondly, it might have to do with her personal style and her cooperation with the organization. And thirdly, it might have to do with her style, personal style, and the corporate culture. So if we were to invoke PNP and set up a select committee, we would be interfering with the press freedom, editorial independence, and will be doing exactly as what the allegations meant. So I don't think we should spend electrical resources in proceeding with this idea. Mr. Gary Fan, I support Ms. Claudia Mo and Mr. Albert Chan's proposal to set up a select committee to inquire into the termination of Li Wai-ling's contract by commercial radio. Last Wednesday, since Ms. Li Wai-ling was dismissed, commercial radio has been defending itself by saying that Li Wai-ling has damaged their relationship. It was said that when gentlemen part, they should not speak ill of each other. However, no explanation has been put forward. The same as the refusal to grant a TV license. I think the commercial radio should explain to the public the reasons behind the immediate dismissal of Li Wai-ling. Unless the commercial radio is being hypocritic. So if an organization, a broadcasting organization, has to fire a radio host, they should give an account to the public, and especially when the dismissal of Li Wai-ling has to do with press freedom in Hong Kong. And Mr. Wong Kwok Hing says there is no need to invoke the PNP to set up a select committee. Then the New Democrats and myself think that under this social sentiment, we should set up a select committee to look into a series of incidents, including the withdrawal of advertisements from Ming Pao and AM 730, and also the Economic Journal editor-in-chief being replaced, and ATV being tinted red, and also the chief executive Wong Ching interfering with the editorial independence of ATV. I think LegCo should have a role to play in this, so I support setting up a select committee to look into these matters. Mr. Wong Kwok Kin, I think we have this PNP syndrome in this council. There have been media coverages since the incident happened, and it's clear to us that it is a personnel dispute within an organization. Well, if Li Wai-ling was dismissed because she bore grudges with her superior, she would lose face, and that's why she would like to disguise herself as a martyr who sacrificed for the sake of press freedom, and she even got Si Wanlong involved. But is Lechko a pleasure ground? Is described by some members of the public. We should be serious. We should be solemn in handling these matters. It's just one single incident. Can we set up a select committee and invoke PNP on the basis of conjecture? I think on this request, unless the FTU has low IQ, we will not support this suggestion. Mr. Wong Ting Kwong. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know why Mr. Raymond Wong is not here today. I seldom watched his My Radio, the program online, and earlier Mr. Raymond Wong made a very insightful analysis into the Li Weiling's incident. I really don't know. This incident is so trivial. I don't know why Lechko has to invoke PNP. Who is Li Weiling anyway? So, as I understood Mr. Raymond Wong's analysis in his online radio program, she has committed 3 sins. And I think his analysis it would be even more in-depth than the PNP investigation. And Li Weiling's remarks were only based on speculation. And I don't think we should spend our resources on her. About the remarks made by some members, well, I think that it's biased, it's an exaggeration, and it seems that it's just as simple as employment issue, and yet now this issue is too sensitive to touch upon. So I oppose both Ms. Claudia Mo and Mr. Albert Chan's motion. Mr. Ng Leung Sing, as a member of the business sector, I am very concerned that the Lechko has to discuss any change in the personnel or any personnel changes, because bosses won't be able to do anything, and that might even be the case when school principals interviews candidates for primary teachers, and people might have second thoughts whether to be school principals or not. Under the one country, two systems principle, I don't know what Hong Kong has become. And many say that everything has been politicized. So the business sector is concerned that if you easily make allegations on public interest, on public's right to know, there could be a trouble. Because everything related to information technology could be related to the public. Now, on Ms. Li Weiling's personal style, as mentioned by some member, she is actually quite biased. And I had this experience. I was interviewed, and yet she did all the talking, and I had no chance to talk. And she, when she was on air, she would just mention your name and relate you to any incident, and then she would just ask the secretary to phone and apologize to you, even if that was a wrong statement. How could that be? It was a wrong statement, and she didn't apologize. She just asked someone to apologize on her behalf. I don't know whether her kind of style was acceptable to the boss. Otherwise, she should be dismissed, and I don't think we should proceed with the PNP. Mr. Albert Ho. Now, just now, Mr. Wong Ting Kwong says he doesn't know who Li Wailing is. I think he has not low IQ, but at least he doesn't have enough knowledge. You could disagree with her, you could even hate her. But as a lecture member, there is no reason why you wouldn't listen to radio or read TV, read newspapers.
Well, you could have high IQ. I'm not saying you have low IQ, but I'm saying you are not very knowledgeable. Mr. Wong Kwong, this is Mr. Albert Ho's time to speak. Well, it's fine if you're angry. Anyway, it's true what Li Wailing said are just her words, her allegations. But those allegations may stand even in court. In many court cases, if someone is rights infringed upon, her allegations alone are enough to take the case to court, and then it's a matter of whether you believe in her. And you have to consider many factors, like objective factors. That is what she said. Could it be corroborated by objective facts? That is, it's possible it could have happened. So, if there are there is objective evidence to corroborate what the person says, so you think what she says is credible, then we could ask her to come and answer questions. That's what a select committee could do. Now, if we ask her to come and give evidence, it's exactly to ask to give more details. And then maybe that the person she named will ask them to come and give evidence as well. But when she gives evidence, she is protected under powers and privileges. So it's important because here we're talking about an important subject on important value of freedom of press. Mr. Wong Kwong. Mr. Albert Ho says that I have little knowledge. That's personal insight. I said I don't know Li Wailing. How come he said then I am not knowledgeable? I want Albert Ho to retract what he said. Would you retract what you said? No. I said not low IQ, but low level of knowledge. I've already defined what's meant by low level of knowledge. So you mean if I know her, then I'm knowledgeable? If I don't, I'm not knowledgeable? It's not right to say that. Mr. Albert Ho, are you willing to retract your remarks? No, I won't. I'll leave it to the public to judge. Mr. Frederick Fung, well, we've seen many cases involving the media in the past few years. In the upstream and downstream. Upstream, very often. I mean, businesses doing business on the mainland, they relate to the mainland, they come to Hong Kong to buy up media organizations like TV and newspapers and so on. And then further down the stream, there are journalists or media personnel who make pointed comments and they are gagged. Let's see how many of the media personnel have been gagged. Now you can't say that of course, media. We must say that media is different than businesses. It's our fourth right. It's always regarded as so. It's to help us monitor the government. That's why freedom of speech and freedom of the press are interrelated. In 2002, Hong Kong was ranked 18 in terms of our press freedom index, but now we have dropped 43 places to 61 as our rank. That's because of all these incidents involving interference with the media. Now, since Li Wailing has made these accusations, well, let her come and tell us. And then if it's not true, let's find out then. Thank you. Mr. Ho. We can see that press freedom is under serious threat these days. At the end of the day, who suffers is not the person being dismissed. It's Hong Kong people who will stand to lose the most. Imagine if there is no Ming Pao to expose the unauthorized building works of Henry Tang and C.Y. Leung, if there's no newspaper to expose the extravagant meals that Donald Tsang and Timothy Tong had, then we wouldn't know that things are so corrupt now. Perhaps we might still be deceived by those APIs to say that we are a clean city, a corruption-free city, because officials keep saying that, but actually they are so corrupt already. So for a free press with independent editorial rights, that's important. There should be a platform for people of different views to give their views. Maybe for some commentators, they may say something that make some of our members unhappy, but then there are so many different types of programs. ATV also says lots on the other side of the coin, but it's just a matter of whether anyone watches their programs. Now, I'm in support of invoking the powers and privileges ordinance, so those involved to come and say, tell us more. Now, especially the commercial radio, it's a commercial organization, but at the same time, it's licensed, it's given airwave to give. So it should be accountable to the public. They has to come and explain its decisions. It's not something like that quoting separation of noblemen shouldn't involve vicious attacks. That's not good enough. And I think they've even quoted that saying wrong. Next, Mr. Raymond Chen. The people power supports the invoking of the powers and privileges ordinance in looking into this case about dismissing Li Wai Ling. It's not because we support Li Wai Ling. We do not like Li Wai Ling. Li Wai Ling has made biased remarks and criticisms against people power, and we agree too. It doesn't mean that program hosts should be given life tenure in employment. Every time someone is dismissed and is interference with press freedom. No, it's not the case. But in this case, Li Wai Ling has made serious accusations against commercial radio, CY Leung, and the SAR government. What we need to look into is whether the Hong Kong SAR has given pressure to media organizations by way of renewal of license. Now, if Li Wai Ling has fabricated her accusations, when she comes to this select committee, she'll be exposed. But then, of course, electoral members are not just commentators. We must do more than just commenting on incidents. We should consider what powers we could use to look into the case. Some members believe the commercial radio ought to give an account to the government. Now, the general manager of commercial radio gave an account for 2.5 minutes. CY Leung statement was about 100 words. Is that enough? Would it become a Rosherman case, and somehow, and then our press freedom is tainted, and next year perhaps our ranking will slide further to 100-something places? So setting up a select committee will give justice to will exonerate any parties who've been wrongly accused. That's why we are in support of setting up a select committee. Mr. Ben Chen. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Albert Ho said something about Mr. Wong Ting Kwong just now. It just shows that he blindly supports Li Wai Ling. As electoral members, there's this strange logic that Li Wai Ling has made an accusation, so she should give evidence to those who've been accused should produce evidence to say that they're innocent. But what sort of logic is that? Now, of course, we cherish press freedom, but I do not believe the Li Wai case is in any way linked to press freedom. In the past, in this council, very often on minor issues, some members would like us to invoke our ultimate powers under the powers and privileges ordinance. No, we can't invoke this very special power so casually. So I'm against invoking this power. Dr. Helena Wong. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This committee has talked about many different cases about investigating CY Leung and other people. Every time when we come to this committee, the pro-establishment camp said, no, we shouldn't conduct the investigation. But if we do not conduct the investigation, that just shows that would just entrench our distrust in the CE and his government. It won't help anything. Now, Li Wailing's case, it's been said that it's not an isolated incident. We are seeing a series of incidents in the media sector, unless you say it's just coincidence. But is there so much coincidence? And then Li Wailing has made some serious allegations. She said it was the CE, C.Y. Leung, who was behind all this. Now, some might say these are just accusations, empty accusations, and some members might say, well, let her say what she wants. But shouldn't we take a good look at these accusations to see if they are true or not? Because for officials being accused, they should be exonerated if the accusation is not true. Now, we are trying to move towards democracy. We want universal suffrage. But when there's no press freedom, speech freedom, we will all stand to suffer. The business sector will suffer because there won't be true information to go by for them in conducting their business. The academia would suffer loss because there's no information. Again, even the public won't be able to have access to reliable information and analyze what's going on around us. So who would benefit from such a development? I think we have to be bold. We should face up to this issue. So that's why the Democratic Party will support Ms. Claudia Mo's suggestion. Ms. Emily Lau? Now, whether we like Li Wailing or not, we shouldn't offend people or insult people or quote certain remarks. You know, elected members should respect ourselves and the public. So as we speak, refrain from making personal attacks. Mr. Chairman, as you know, the journalists going to do a demonstration this Sunday. I welcome you joining the protest because you are all in favor of press freedom and speech freedom. Now, if the journalists are to take protest all the way to the CE's office, of course, the government is concerned. Now, Li Wailing is just one of the reasons leading to the protest about this cause. And of course, because we are all very concerned about the possible loss of press freedom and speech freedom. Now, the index or the ranking of Hong Kong is sliding quickly. That's a concern. Li Wailing has said that if she's summoned under the powers and privileges ordinance, she's willing to come and give evidence. So if there are any parties who could help the LegCo to look into the case, that is it because the radio is to secure a renewal of its license, that's why it's doing this, or is there someone involved, say, from Beijing and so on? I think we should look into it. I'm all for doing so. Mr. Ben Chan said that it's not a problem, but we haven't even started the investigation. How do you know there's not a problem? Really, it's so strange that you say that. Even if you're a judge, you have to hear a case. How can you decide or rule without even hearing the case? So don't do that, DAB. So we're in support of the motion. Mr. Kenneth Chan, alone. Now, many members said this is just an employment case. Before there's the legislation, say a boss fires staff member, you might say it's an individual case, you know, when it's actually to do with discrimination based on gender or disability. Now here we're talking an employer taking up our airwave spectrum, and here this is a commentator being fired because she's one that's very critical of the government. Well, it's true. Sometimes she asks stupid questions. I am infuriated sometimes too at questions she asks. I don't know how to answer them. But that here we talk about press freedom being undermined. I don't say that we cherish press freedom and we just say it and that's it. Now, you won't be able to see press freedom being undermined. Maybe the commentators are replaced, and then the newspaper columns are replaced, you wouldn't be told about it. It just happens. Last year, our ranking in press freedom has slid down to 58. This year, 61. Now our press freedom is doing worse than some third world cities. It's such a shame, and it's a nonsense that we call ourselves a nation city or world city.
Mr. Adano, Mr. Chairman, every 10 years some saga will some scandal will happen in commercial radio. 10 years ago it was Raymond Wong. This year it's Li Wai-ling. It's a coincidence. 10 years ago and now, both were at the time when license renewal was going to happen, and earlier the liaison, there were reports that the liaison office didn't like Li Wai-ling, and also advertisements were withdrawn from some newspapers, the AM 730 and so on and so forth, by some mainland-backed enterprises. And members are concerned because it's like we are taking this case to court and we're going to test the evidence. But no, this is not a court of law. This is the Legislative Council. We are monitoring and checking if the public interest has been have been undermined. So should we wait until in the media we see nothing else but Si Wai-ling teaching people how to make dishes, etc.? Not only is Li Wai-ling responsible, in the face of such a serious accusation, the commercial radio has failed to put up any explanation. So it is also a big question mark. So I support Ms. Claudia Mo's motion to invoke the PNP. Mr. Tommy Cheung, I want to declare that, first of all, my wife's family are shareholders of commercial radio, and secondly, I was also a host of commercial radio, and thirdly, I don't quite like Ms. Li Wai-ling as a radio host. Mr. James Tian. Chairman, Li Wai-ling is a very fierce figure. Some appreciate it's a very controversial figure. Some appreciate her, some don't. Like Tommy Cheung, he doesn't appreciate her. Well, in this incident, it's questionable whether we should investigate into it, and how, if so. Now, commercial radio is a private company, unlike a public listed company. Now, in the past, we also tried to invoke PNP to investigate into Mr. Barry Cheung's company, which is a public listed company. Now, this is different. We agree that if it were the government's counterpart organization, then the PNP should be invoked. Now, for commercial radio, government issues license to this broadcaster. Of course, the government can exert influence by choosing to issue license or not the operation of the commercial radio. Some say that the PNP is a trump card. And Mr. Albert Ho thinks that everyone should know Li Wai-ling, but I tend to agree with Mr. Wong Ting Kwong that that may not be the case, and we may not need to use the trump card. So I think this matter should be referred to the ITB panel to look further into it. And in the course, we can have a public hearing. We can also summon and receive deputations and invite Ms. Lee and the commercial radio to come to talk about her dismissal. And this could be our first step. If the matter is still not addressed, we can then consider other alternatives. Mr. Leung Yiu-chung. Mr. James Tin says that the ITB panel should look into this matter instead. But the problem is the panel doesn't have any power. That is why we need to set up a select committee to have a thorough investigation. Because some may say that they're not protected, and they dare not say anything at the panel. So to investigate thoroughly, we should invoke the PNP. And we're not trying to look into Ms. Lee Wai-ling's conduct, but rather the organization. And as the member said it, this organization is related to the government because it gets a license from the government, and it also uses our airwaves as a broadcaster. It affects people's daily living, and it also has to do with press freedom. This is the crux of the matter. So even if some members dislike Lee Wai-ling, it doesn't matter, because we're not looking into somebody's conduct. We're looking into the whole incident as to whether our press freedom would be suppressed, and this is the most important point. We can dislike or like or dislike Lee Wai-ling, or whether we might know her, we may not know her, but that's not the point. The point is we want to safeguard the most important value in Hong Kong, and that's press freedom, so that it will be free from any suppression, from any influence or the government. That is what we are trying to look into. Mr. Yip Kin Yun. Just now, Mr. James Tien made a point, and I agree with him that this is of our concern. And Mr. Albert Ho knows is Lee Wai-ling, and Mr. Wong Ting Kwong doesn't. I don't think it matters. This is not the point. It does not matter whether we know any member of the public when we deal with any incident in this council. What matters is whether this is of public concern, whether it has far-reaching implications, and if the answer is yes, then even if it's just an ordinary citizen, we should deal with this matter. So we should look at the implications behind this incident and consider whether it is of public concern. In 2007, I was involved in the Hong Kong Education Institute incident, Hong Kong Institute of Education, and I was just a nobody. I was just one of the lecturers there. But as I understand, at that time, LegCo had seriously considered whether to hold an inquiry into the incident, because if a senior government official interfered with the institute's decision as to whether a lecturer should be dismissed or not, it was a serious interference with academic freedom. And at that time, before the LegCo made a move, the government then set up a committee which looked into this matter. So the government took up this matter instead of LegCo. But I understand at the time LegCo was also enthusiastic in trying to deal with this matter. So the point is whether this incident has implications, not whether we know the person involved in the incident. Dr. Lo Wai Kwok. Now, having heard the remarks made by members, I'm really confused. Are we talking about employment for famous radio, employment protection for famous radio hosts in Hong Kong? Now, some quoted the example of the change of post of a particular official or particular staff in press organization, and also the dismissal of Lee Wai-ling, the radio host, and the director actually came out and gave an explanation. Is it the case that press freedom has been undermined? I really don't see any example of any news articles, any press release being suppressed unless it's discriminatory in nature, it's illegal. Otherwise, I really don't see any examples of news being prevented from being published. Also, on whether a particular member knows a particular person or not, of course, this is not the key. But if members are interested in this issue, we have a panel which can look into it. Is it really necessary to invoke the PNP to see if the radio host of a commercial organization gets employment protection? And on the rating of press freedom in Hong Kong, it's lowered. It has to do with some members always accusing Hong Kong of having press freedom being undermined. We still have some 5 members waiting to speak, and I will draw a line here. And then I will allow the 2 members proposing the motion to respond, and then I will handle the motions. Mr. Charles Mok. Now, LegCo doesn't have to deal with anything because all these incidents have to do with labor disputes and personnel disputes, etc. But in fact, we have the role to monitor the government, government, and many members say that by invoking PNP, we will be passing judgment before we investigate, and if we invoke PNP, we will be offering protection, legally speaking, to the witnesses to disclose the truth in this council. And some say that the LegCo should do something about this. And, well, I actually had this in mind, that if we propose to invoke PNP, I know what the voting result would be. And just now, Mr. James Chen suggests that the matter be referred to ITBP for further discussion. So please ask a couple of your fellow party members to help us in this panel, because we know that ultimately the motion will not be carried. So, and I have friends who are considering whether to leave Hong Kong for the sake of their children. Now, about Mr. Ng Leung Sing's remark, well, he said that everything related to information technology has to do with the public interest. And yes, in fact, I agree that is the case. That's why we need to look into this matter, and I support Ms. Claudia Moore and Mr. Albert Chan's motion to invoke the PNP to investigate into this incident. Dr. Priscilla Lam. I need to declare that, first of all, I have known Li Wai-ling for over 2 decades, and I have also lodged a complaint against her with the Broadcasting Authority. So, setting aside my personal feelings on this incident, we would be interested to know more details if commercial radio were to give a more detailed explanation. But I recall Li Wai-ling herself said whilst on air that that Priscilla Leung and Raymond Wong complained against her, and it was a huge trouble for her and her superior, because her superior would have to listen to the whole program and again, and in fact, there are many others who were not happy with her program and have complained. But I don't agree that PNP should be invoked, even if you want to know more details. If members are interested in this incident, then even if she attends the panel meeting, she should have the courage to say anything she wants, and because she is a courageous person, so I'm not very convinced that PNP should be invoked. You talk about protection under the PNP ordinance, and yet PNP also absolves any criminal or any legal liability. So when someone makes a statement under POP, that should be the truth, and I think we could refer this matter to the ITB panel. So would she write? Now, just now, a member says that we always criticize Hong Kong for not having press freedom, and that's the reason for our ratings being falling in terms of press freedom. However, in the coming Sunday, the Hong Kong Journalists Association is calling for a free press, free Hong Kong protest, and journalists. Can you say that journalists and practitioners in the sector are not familiar with the issues? If you say so, it is very disrespectful to journalists. Now, Li Weiling's incident and other incidents before her involving press freedom, what we're concerned is that there will be a chilling effect, and Hong Kong will be overcast by this chilling effect. There might be a lot of excuses, like this is a corporate decision, this is a dispute between shareholders or an employment issue. However, we're concerned because we are worried whether the government is interfering with its invisible hand. If no explanation is given, it's not fair to the government either, because the government has no opportunity to clarify its position on a credible platform. So there will never be a chance to address public's doubts.
Mr. Chen Kam-lam. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Wu Chi-wai said if we do not seek declaration, it's not fair to the government, it's not fair to CY Leung, but the one who has caused this unfairness or this injustice is exactly the Democratic camp and Li Weilingh. Now, she's dismissed by commercial radio, and then you're keen to invoke the powers and privileges ordinance. Makes reasons because she's always made use of the airways in the commercial radio to criticize the government, make fabricating issues without any substantiated facts. She just speaks nonsense. So people who've tuned into her are not happy with her. She's in the same camp with the opposition camp here. It's only natural that you want to defend her. Dr. Low Wai Kwok put it really nicely. After commercial radio has dismissed her, we don't see that speech freedom or press freedom has become restricted, and we don't see that journalists or media organizations are not able to speak their mind. So she's creating such right terror, and actually you are the one starting such white terror. Some members mention job security or job insecurity, or everybody has all of a sudden become a barrister. You have jumped to your ruling without hearing the case. It's only because she said her dismissal is linked to CY Leung. Shouldn't she first produce the evidence before she says something like that? She shouldn't make up things. And then Leshko wants to look into her case. It's ridiculous. Mr. Pezza, speech freedom, press freedom, editorial independence is all very important. In recent years, the government and the consortium have conducted themselves a bit differently. We've seen different phenomena, but do we want to invoke powers and privileges ordinance? We have to consider the fundamental principles. That is, where there's a matter of a huge public interest or there's a major failure case, then we have to look at prima facie case as well. Now, I followed Li Weiling's interviews, her first interview and the one at the City Forum. She should at least provide some prima facie evidence to back up her accusation. Now, she kept stressing that it's purely her sentiment. That's what she felt. Well, it would be like a cosmetics commercial. It's based on feelings. And then she said she's the witness. Yes, indeed, she's the witness. But what is the nature of her evidence? Is it hearsay evidence? As just something she heard, or did she actually see something herself, or did she actually hear something from someone? And what would it be, circumstantial evidence, and so on? So far, there's no prima facie evidence, so we could actually help her. Now, can she? Was she only there to say things under protection? But she's always daring what she says. In her interview, she was bold enough to accuse Stephen Chen and so on without any legal protection. This is already libelous. She even attacked the character of Stephen Leung. So whether there's legal protection or not, she can speak. And even with legal protection, we should make her say something that's not true. Mr. James Tan, you're speaking for a second. I'll just give you 1 minute. Oh, 1 minute is enough. I just want to finish what I couldn't finish in the earlier 2 minutes. The Liberal Party's position believes that we shouldn't invoke the powers and privileges ordinance because this is our ultimate power. So I think as the first step, we should first go to the Information Technology and Broadcasting panel. Now, Mr. Charles Mock said the Liberal Party has no member on their panel. Yes, we will deal with that. If Mr. Leung Yu-chung said a lot of things could not be said in the panel, then we look at it again. Because very often we find at panel hearings people are willing to speak their mind. If commercial radio could send someone to explain why Li Weiling is dismissed, well, the commercial radio could speak freely and give the reasons why they dismissed Li Weiling. So as the first step, I think we should discuss the matter at the panel. Today, we do not support the PMP motion. Mr. Albert Chen, 1 minute, please. 2 minutes, please? No, because we have to hand over the room to the Finance Committee. I need 5 minutes to deal with your motions. Mr. Chairman, where we are in Hong Kong now is a city of beasts and evil spirits. There's someone dominating the community, and most others are gagged. Some say that the Democratic camp is together with Li Weiling, but I said already I was the first to complain against her. My complaint was substantiated by the Broadcasting Authority. If you think that what she said could just be accusations, you could go and complain against her. So I think this investigation is important. I'm not talking about her dismissal here. Dismissal is about a matter between the employer and the employee. That's not the focus of my investigation. I made it clear that my investigation is about whether the CE or someone in the government has interfered with press freedom. It's like when Lo Chang-on interfered with academic freedom. Well, remember what you said then. Again, it's all nonsense. So we have to defend press freedom. That's why we must set up a select committee. Don't just be the bouncer for the Communist Party. Ms. Claudia Mo. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've written to the ITB panel long ago. But last time I asked how come Li Weiling was moved from a morning program to an evening program. It was the most unusual staff shuffle. But the ITB panel wouldn't even allow a discussion. So this time around, the fate could be the same unless there's someone from the Liberal Party joining the panel. No, we're not even allowed to discuss it. Let's forget about public hearing. Some said that there is no concrete evidence, no hard evidence. If Li Weiling produced recordings, that you'll be so scared. You know, we are journalists. It's all about trust, especially when we talk to our superiors. You mean you would you tape what you say with your superior? It's about our integrity. Perhaps to you, integrity doesn't mean anything. That's why you laughed. And it's also a shame to say this. The government could do something behind the scene, and they can pretend to be otherwise out in the open. So this motion, this proposal is for the House Committee Chairman to move a motion at a council meeting and appoint a select committee to look into the termination of employment of Li Wai Ling, and also the select committee would be given the powers under Section 9(1) of the Legislative Council Powers and Privileges Ordinance. Do you wish to put the matter to a vote? Okay, the division bell will be rung for 5 minutes. There are two applications from Ms. Claudia Mo and Mr. Albert Chan. So what are we voting on? Well, the nature of the two requests is the same. If at the council meeting we take up Ms. Claudia Mo's motion, then we won't deal with Mr. Albert Chan's motion because his motion is a subset of Ms. Mo's one. So because I will just represent members to move this motion at a council meeting, and then working group will be set up to decide on the terms of reference and so on. So we're just dealing with one with Ms. Claudia Mo's motion. Well, we're just dealing with one motion, but then my understanding is different. The way we will deal with these two motions. Now today, if I deal with Ms. Claudia Mo's proposal, but the two proposals are the same in nature, but the wordings are different. If today I have dealt with Ms. Claudia Mo's proposal, I won't allow your proposal, then I won't deal with it next week because the nature is the same for the two proposals. That's why I'm dealing with both proposals in one go. It's really about whether I, as the chairman of the House Committee, would move a motion at a council meeting to see if we will authorize the appointment of a select committee, and if the motion is carried, then there will be a working group to look at to consider the wordings of the terms of reference and so on. By then, you could all be involved in the discussion. You know, members who join the working group to all give their views. Mr. Min Leung Sing, chairman of the Finance Committee, maybe we have to take up 5 minutes every time. 5 minutes at most, please.
現在開始表。
Voting begins. Members, please. Members, please check your votes. If there are no questions, voting is closed. Ms. Clark, please display the results. 64 present, 26 yes, 37 no, no abstention. The motion is vetoed. Any other business? The President already indicated that for the two members' motions and the agenda for this week, they will be deferred to the 19th of March, and they are motions proposed by Mr. Felix Xiong and Mr. Ma Fengkuo. So I just want to confirm this. These two motions on the 19th of March meeting agenda.